The Raid films display a unique, rarely seen fighting style, pencak silat, and so apply multiple established editing techniques from the past decades in order to showcase the warfare clearly. The development in editing from the Raid to the Raid 2 symbolizes a greater understanding in visually simplifying the quick, complex movements. Instead of creating a wholly original editing approach to complement this action, Gareth Evans instead twists and improves upon well-regarded editing approaches. One common editing trope in action films is the alteration of time, the repetition or cutting of movement. The 1982 martial arts film Dragon Lord uses repetition in order to keep a strong, consistent flow of movement. The repetition of frames at a cut allows one to fully recognize the complex movements and creates a sense of immersion. Viewers are functionally blind to information just before or after an edit, and as a result the action must be repeated to perceive smooth movement. However, some modern films apply the cutting or displacement of movement in order to create quicker motion to action that wasn't necessarily complex in the first place. An example of this is the Bourne Ultimatum. Although characters appear to punch and kick one another, in reality the editor is tricking the audience. Sequences are cut so that moving objects or people are further displaced after the edit. Desh's attacks on Nikki are effective as she is displaced after every hit. This creates a smooth, match action edit, giving the false impression that full movement has taken place. These cuts allow for the uncomplicated progression of action, avoiding any deceleration. With Evans's The Raid, both cutting and repetition are used. The careful and equal use of cuts and extensions allows for the creation of rhythm to the film's hyper-violent, ballet-esque fights. This combination of established edits is exemplified in The Raid's first hallway brawl. Evans's mixed alteration of time is beneficial to the scene. Firstly, there is a consistent flow of movement. Rama, played by Aiko Huedes, turns to face an unseen foe and is shown turning again to an expected attacker. As with Dragon Lord, any confusion with movement is clarified with repetition. Secondly, the scene incorporates modern cutting, cheating the viewer and enabling the avoidance of difficult effects while keeping the cadence. As Rama places his knife against the throat of an attacker, the preceding frames then show the throat cut and Rama's arm moving away. The martial arts appears faster, resulting in the slower motion of cutting someone's throat, adhering to the entrenched pace of the sequence. Mentioned earlier, pencak silat is an unexplored fighting style, and this sequence represents Evans's attempt to understand which methods suit the art, concluding that it benefits from a mixture of both established techniques. As The Raid 2 expands upon its predecessor in space and ambition, the editing also follows suit. The sequel's action scenes, particularly the prison riot and warehouse raid, are accompanied by long takes which greatly aid in the immersion of ultra-violence. The brutality of combat becomes more realistic than the predecessor. It has an unbroken and consistent existence. However, these shots are not continuous. They are false. They are multiple shots made to look as one. Following a style parallel to Alfred Hitchcock's Rope, Evans slyly cuts his shot to appear as one. Whereas Rope contained 10 long takes cut together over 80 minutes, The Raid 2 opts to have 10 short takes cut over 1 minute. The use of short takes is simply down to the complexity of action. The camera consistently moves across, through, up and down the battlefields. This showcases Evans's commitment to the grounding of his spectacle while acknowledging modern trends. These false continuous takes have been used increasingly to ground otherwise unrealistic or absurd action. This technique was notably used by Edgar Wright and Joss Whedon, who tried to realize their action with continuous takes in The World's End and The Avengers respectively. However, Evans applies this aid in absorption to an art that was already deemed by critics as the best, most brutal action sequences ever caught on camera, ultimately allowing for full engagement. During the action sequences to the Raid series, cuts to stillness only appear for two reasons. Still close-ups appear before any combat to create tension and pressure, while cuts to stillness during action are used mainly to progress the action from one space to another. Hallway to apartment, car to warehouse, and change in direction. Other than these instances, Any cut during the action scene is fixated to movement. Once the main source of movement has left the shot, the cut catches up. More importantly, cuts to motion often allow for full visibility of movement. Cuts to movement are frequently edits to mid or long shots, where one's actions can be fully detected and admired. There are no cuts to facial close-ups during action, preventing any break in tempo or motion. Compared to the Raid, any hand-to-hand scene in the Bourne Ultimatum is presented in mid-shots to close-ups. Whereas Bourne's editing choices aid in humanizing the action, the Raid does this prior to combat, establishing character intentions, allowing for the ensuing sequences to be viewed as spectacles. The Raid's cuts to movement are hardly comparable to modern editing, for it derives the style from Dragon Lord. Jackie Chan cuts to movement in mid to long shots, allowing for audiences immersion in Kung Fu. But any cuts to stillness or close-ups in the Dragon Lord do not progress the action. Instead, they momentarily stall it, breaking the rhythm and tense adrenaline. Removing the close-ups, the Raid films and Dragon Lord, made some 30 years apart, appear very similarly styled. Claimed by many as one of the best action films of the decade, the Raid films owe their visual linking of movement to Evans's mashing of several editing styles, which keep the audience on their toes, leaving them surprised, but ultimately entertained.